The choice of which yeast performs best is often a question that home cider makers have. Unfortunately, it is not an easy question to answer as there are hundreds of yeasts on the market. These yeasts are typically bred and marketed towards a specific type of fermentation. The most common varieties of yeasts are ale yeasts, lager yeasts, white wine yeasts, red wine yeasts, and champagne yeasts. Even within these varieties, there are variations in expressed flavors, aromas, and perceived sweetness. It can be very overwhelming to select which yeast is right for your application. Even more confusing is that any variety of yeast, whether it be an ale yeast, a lager yeast, or a wine yeast, will work for cider. Yeasts perform the critical function of converting fermentable sugar, sucrose, dextrose, fructose, glucose, and maltose into alcohol. Any yeast, except non-alcoholic yeasts, can ferment any of these sugars to produce alcohol. In this video, I will be comparing 4 different yeasts: an ale yeast, Safale S-04, a Saison yeast, Lallemond Belle Saison, a wine yeast, Redstar Premier Cote de Blanc, and a cider yeast, Mangrove Jack MO2, to see which yeast is the best for cider making. For all fermentations, I will be using the same recipe: 13.5 fluid ounces of cider base, which is equal to 500 grams of the concentrate, water up to 1 gallon, and 1 teaspoon of diammonium phosphate, or 3 grams. A whole packet of yeast will be pitched into all fermenters. All fermentations will occur at 68 degrees Fahrenheit in my basement. The yeast will be compared with the following metrics with a score out of 5, with 5 being the highest. The price, in which the higher score is the least cost. The amount of sediment the yeast produces, where higher is the least amount of sediment. The clarity of the final product. The aroma, flavor, and body of the final product, as well as my overall impression. The yeast with the highest score will be my winner. Let's get started. All right, everybody, it is time for the tasting of our 4 yeasts that we use to make this traditional, I'm going to put in quotes because we used a base for this cider. Most likely going to come out to be an old world or new world style cider. We're going to go ahead and taste them side by side. I honestly don't remember. I wrote them down, so don't worry. I don't remember which of the caps is which, so this is a completely blind taste test to me. We'll go through and evaluate this and see what we get out of each one of these ciders. I'm very curious. So let's go ahead and start with moving these aside so we can get to our cups. And going ahead and giving these an open, testing how the carbonation is. So, seems decently carbonated. Support. Alright. I'm just going to leave the caps next to them. This is the gold cap, the first one. The yellow cap is the second one. Give the support. Okay. Then we're following up with the dark purple cap. And then finally the silver cap. Each one of these are nicely carbonated, which is good. Okay, let's go ahead and start from right to my right, your left, and let's take a look. Right off the bat, these are pretty crystal clear. Not much, well, this one is very crystal clear. There is kind of, I would call this a brilliant finish. It's very clear. Carbonation level is good. It's petulant. The next one, also crystal clear, also petulant carbonation. I'm determining it's petulant by the number of bubbles that are coming off of the bottom. It's a nice stream of light amount of bubbles, usually between like 1 to 4 or 1 to 10 streams of bubbles. It's pretty good indication of petulance. Same thing with cider number 3. and also cider number 4. Visually, there is no difference between these ciders, which I suppose is a good thing. All right, let's go ahead and start with Aroma for the gold cap. Put the silver cap over here, back where the silver bottle is, so I don't keep missing anything. All right, gold cap. So, the aroma seems kind of, it smells a little bit like apple blossom and kind of a phenol. I would describe it to be kind of closer to, this is going to sound bad, but this has the vibes of a Sharpie. It is appley on the bouquet. Yeah, appley and slightly floral. Coincidentally, I probably just figured out what that one was, because the smell is very similar to other smells. Actually, maybe not. Let's see. Okay. Yellow over here has it's kind of a restrained smell. It's a light apple smell. As you can tell, apple's there, but the bouquet is restrained compared to the first one. The first one is a more popping bouquet. This one is, it's restrained. Still a nice apple smell to it. Let's go to the third one. Ooh. This is interesting. Certainly, that's not... Maybe that is from the yeast. It smells... I'm getting hints of... kind of like ham. This smells hammy. Like cured ham. Now, I don't eat ham, so that's weird. But that's what this smells like. A reminiscent of a salted ham. For the purple one. This last one, it's hard to smell. It's kind of funky. A little bit footy. That's how I would describe this last one. It's kind of footy. Yeah, I'm gonna see if it might be the glass for this one. Nah, that footy smell lingers. It's kind of footy and licorice. Is how I would describe it. It has a very licorice kind of scent to it. Super interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a strong licorice smell if you ask me. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and go from... I'm going to go ahead and replace these back because the smell is the same in both glasses. So we know it's... this one has more of a licorice bouquet, though, but the more open up vessel. This is designed for smelling, so I'm not going to give this the benefit of having a better glass for smelling. Okay, let's start from the right. Again, where this was the gold one. The flavor is light and crisp and kind of reminiscent of candy apple. Honestly, it's very pleasant. It has it has a nice apple presence to it. It's very distinguishably an apple. That being said, it's kind of one-dimensional, and the flavor seems to be a little bit fleeting. Just some club soda from tap, just to kind of refresh the palate. All right, going on to the yellow one. I'm getting... It's not... So, the apple is there, but the apple flavor kind of is kind of being transformed into like a honeydew. I can't remember. What's the green melon? Is it cantaloupe or honeydew? I think it's cantaloupe. It's kind of cantaloupe-y to me. It kind of has a peppery back end, too. Very slight peppery back end. All right. Going with the purple yeast. Let me get a palate refresh with my club soda. That is really interesting. So this one is substantially more tart than the other two. But that being said, it tastes artificially. Okay. The tartness of this does not taste like malic acid. This tastes like citric acid. It is like a blend of citric acid and malic acid here. That's the tartness that I get from this third one, which is weird because these are all the identical recipe. You can even tell down to the clarity on here. They're all the same color. They all have the same sugar, same gravity. This one just has a more acid-forward finish, and it's kind of a citrusy acid finish. It kind of reminded me a little bit of lemon peel while tasting it. It's a very lemon peely type of flavor as well. So, interesting. Yeah, and smells like smoked ham. What the hell? I don't understand this. That is wild. It's really good. Whatever this yeast is, this yeast produces a little bit of funkiness, but I'm not hating it. All right, one more palate refresh. All right, back to the silver one. This one has a kind of a barnyard type of flavor to it. It tastes like some variety of... now, obviously, these were all pretty well regulated, but it tastes like there's some variety of maybe some co-fermentation with Brett in this one. It's given me kind of that kind of strong farmyard flavor profile that I would get from Old Country ciders. I am, quite frankly, shocked of the differences between these four. I was expecting minor flavor differences. These are dynamically different ciders. Each one of these has their own merits, and I can see a use for every single one of these yeasts. Okay, so I'm going to make a few guesses first before I go up and get my phone and check which ones these are. I'm going to guess that this one is Cote de Blanc. The gold is Cote de Blanc. I'm going to guess that the yellow is AC4. I'm going to get, or sorry, SO4. Safale S-04. I'm going to guess that the one that is lemony and kind of has a smoked ham type of smell is going to be Belle Saison. And I'm going to guess that this last one over here, the silver one, is AC4. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so I have everything tallied up, and here are my evaluations. In last place, the yeast I liked the least is going to be Lallemond Belle Saison, or the silver cap over here. That footy note was really not doing it for me, and also I didn't care for the flavor. So I rated that a 2.57 for overall score. In second place is going to be Safale S-04 with a 3.28. I actually liked Safale S-04, but due to its kind of higher price compared to it's the second most expensive yeast. So that kind of marks it down, as well as the sediment it produced after fermentation. While it is perfectly clear right now, it produced a ton of sediment after fermentation, so that kind of marked it down quite a bit. Although the actual output of it was pretty good. I did like the aroma, the flavor, and did have good body and good overall impression. So it's just more of the yeast performance, which is the reason why I got marked down. Yeast performance and cost. So the third place yeast I have is Mangrove Jack MO2, or this purple one right here. It was really interesting. It's a very interesting yeast. I think that if I were to use this yeast in the future, this is a very specific yeast. You would use this yeast if you were trying to get something that was more reminiscent to Old Country ciders out of it. I think that this yeast is like well suited for that. You get a lot of interesting flavor and taste notes out of it. But the first place yeast, and this is consistent with my apple wine, is Redstar Premier Cote de Blanc. It is just a good yeast. It's a good yeast. It's the least expensive yeast on the list. Good fermentation performance resulted in relatively little sediment at the bottom of the fermenter, as well as clearing up brilliantly. Good flavor, interesting aroma, that kind of Sharpie type of off note there. It is one of the telltale signs of this yeast. And I notice it more when you have higher alcohol concentrations. Right now, with this kind of low 5 to 5.5% alcohol concentration cider here, it's kind of in the background, so I was able to immediately spot this yeast. That's how noticeable that flavor, that aroma is. Once you detect it, it is very difficult to not detect it. The Mangrove Jack MO2 was a 3.57, and the Redstar Cote de Blanc was a 4.21. And that's my evaluation for these yeast. I would personally use every single one of these yeasts except for Belle Saison. I don't like it, to be honest with you. Maybe I just had a bad experience with it, but seeing as these were held pretty constant side by side, and I have a lot of other yeast over here that I have more experience and familiarity with, and they performed better, I'm going to go ahead and say that I would not recommend Belle Saison. That's just personal opinion. I know a lot of people like the yeast. Mangrove Jack MO2, fine yeast, used for old country ciders. That is probably what I will use it for. All right, sorry about that. Battery cut out right as I was finishing up my conclusion here. These last two are very good for New World style ciders. If you want a nice crisp, clean finish, I would go with the S-04. If you want a more fruity, floral finish, I would go with the Redstar Premier Cote de Blanc. They both are fine performing yeasts. I think you'll be satisfied with any of these three. Mangrove Jack MO2, Safale S-04, or Redstar Premier Cote de Blanc. They are all fine yeasts. I can't wish I could say the same with the Belle Saison. Sorry, it's just not my preference. Okay, that's it. Thank you all for going through this experiment with me. I always think it's fascinating to do these type of experiments, but they are very time-consuming to do and require a lot of preparation. So I hope you appreciated the results of these. And hopefully down in the comments, you can go ahead and drop me a line and say what your experience have been when you do kind of these bench trials with different yeasts. I'm interested in hearing. As always, cheers and happy cidering.